Welcome to Maritime Pakistan, your gateway to the fascinating world of oceans and the opportunities they present to every one of us. Our goal is to explore the shared heritage of the seas and oceans to achieve global prosperity. Today's discussion explores the book The Sea in History, the Ancient World. Our discussion will focus on the 19th chapter, Alexandria and the Sea in Hellenistic and Roman times.
So, have you ever stopped to wonder how an ancient civilization, totally lacking modern technology, managed global logistics? Seriously, how did one single ancient city manage to feed a massive empire and connect the trade of the entire known world? Well, today in this explainer, we're looking at Alexandria. And we're not just looking at it as some famous spot on a map, but as a brilliantly engineered solution to a series of massive logistical challenges that completely defined the ancient world.
Okay, let's dive into this incredible problem-solution journey. We'll start by looking at the geographical nightmare that was the silt problem, move to the brilliant founding of the great port, explore its time as a Hellenistic hub, see how it transformed into Rome's economic engine, and finally uncover how they became the absolute masters of ancient shipping.
First up, Section 1, the silt problem. To really wrap our heads around the pure genius of Alexandria, we first have to understand the geography of pre-Alexandrian Egypt. For millennia, the River Nile was their ultimate highway, a 1,500-kilometer stretch of water. It went through a very steady regime of annual flooding, which deposited massive amounts of rich sediment. Now, while that was absolutely vital for agriculture, it was literally terrible for deep-water ports. As the river emptied into the Mediterranean, it discharged tons of mud and silt, constantly choking the harbors located at the river mouths. For centuries, this constant silting was a massive roadblock for Egyptian sea trade.
That brings us to Section 2, founding the Great Port.
Fast forward to the 4th century BC. Alexander the Great arrives in Egypt, and he has a very specific vision. He needs a spacious, deep-water port that wouldn't just choke on Nile mud. His solution was incredibly clever. He actually built his city west of the westernmost branch of the Nile, the Canopic branch. This meant natural sea currents pushed all that muddy silt away from the city. But the real masterstroke? Building the Heptastadion. It was a 1.2-kilometer causeway running right down the middle to an island. This single piece of infrastructure instantly created two massive, protected, deep-water harbors. Plus, through a network of inland canals connecting to Lake Mareotis, the port still had direct, mud-free access to the Nile. Talk about a win-win.
But, there was still one more massive problem to solve, and it brings us to this staggering number, 130. The Egyptian coastline was notoriously flat and featureless. The ancient Greek historian Herodotus even noted you could be a day's sail offshore and hit a muddy bottom without ever seeing land. So to fix this total navigational nightmare, they built the famous Pharos Lighthouse, completed around 279 BC. Standing almost 130 meters tall, which is just 10 meters shy of the Great Pyramid, by the way, it functioned as a glowing artificial mountain that guided ships safely into the new harbor from miles and miles away.
Moving right along to Section 3, the Hellenistic hub.
Following Alexander's death, the Ptolemaic Dynasty took over Egypt, and Alexandria just exploded into the undisputed cultural and military emporium of the Mediterranean. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how these three converging trade lines fueled this incredibly cosmopolitan city. First, you have imports, things like luxury olive oil, wine, and marble arriving for the wealthy Greek community. Second, the exports, massive amounts of Egyptian grain, papyrus, and textiles heading out. And third, distant trade, exotic spices, ivory, and silk arriving all the way from India and East Africa. This vast wealth funded absolute wonders like the Great Library, and supported a staggering 300-ship naval fleet.
But as we know, empires shift. Comparing these two eras really reveals how dramatically Alexandria's role changed. The Hellenistic period was defined by this vibrant independence, a naval arms race, and its status as a cultural capital. But after the defeat of Cleopatra in 30 BC, the Roman era began. The Mediterranean was completely pacified into what they called Mare Nostrum, RC, a Roman lake. Alexandria actually lost its political independence and transitioned into a strictly utilitarian economic engine for Rome. All of its magnificent infrastructure was totally repurposed to serve a new master.
Which leads us perfectly into Section 4, Rome's economic engine.
Under the Pax Romana, the risks of maritime trade plummeted. Because of this, Alexandria swelled to a population of 500,000 people, becoming the absolute lifeline for the empire's capital. Let this massive figure sink in. 150,000. Up to 150,000 tons of grain tax traveled down the Nile and flowed through Alexandria's specialized entrepot every single year. Rome had a highly privileged citizen population that fully expected a regular supply of staples. And Alexandria? It was the beating heart of this massive, empire-wide distribution network.
So, the crucial point is how they actually managed to move all of this weight. The average Roman grain carrier wasn't exactly small. It hauled between 340 and 400 tons of cargo, which is impressive on its own. But Alexandria's deep harbors occasionally serviced absolute titans of the sea, like the legendary superfreighter known as the Isis. Measuring around 55 meters long, the Isis had a mind-blowing carrying capacity of up to 1,300 tons. Just the existence of freighters like this proves the incredible scale and depth of the Alexandrian port facilities.
Finally, let's explore Section 5, Masters of Ancient Shipping.
Think about it. How did ancient mariners move thousands of tons of cargo 1,450 nautical miles across a highly dangerous sea? Well, it required absolute mastery of a perilous sailing season, and this brilliantly illustrates the timeline they were up against. Shippers were constantly racing against the clock. Ships that wintered in Alexandria would load up and depart by May, fighting headwinds to reach Rome's ports by June or July. They'd quickly unload and ride the favorable return winds back to Egypt in just a few weeks. They absolutely had to finish before October. Why? Because from October to April, the Romans declared mare clausum, the closed sea. Violent winter storms meant open sea sailing was basically off limits.
But the grain trade was just one piece of an incredibly complex intermodal supply chain. Tracing the journey for Eastern luxury goods is just fascinating. First, ships from the Indian Ocean and Arabia arrived at Egyptian Red Sea ports. Second, goods were offloaded and carried overland across the punishing Eastern desert by beasts of burden. Third, they finally reached the Nile and were shipped downriver. And fourth, they were stored and finally transshipped from Alexandria onto massive vessels bound for Rome. It's literally an ancient mirror to our modern, globalized shipping networks.
Which brings us to our conclusion, beautifully captured by the Greek orator Dio Chrysostom way back in AD 102. Visiting the city, he was awestruck, writing, "For Alexandria is situated, as it were, at the crossroads of the whole world, as if it were a market serving a single city. It perfectly summarizes everything we've explored today. Through brilliant geographic placement and highly innovative infrastructure, Alexandria became the ultimate economic engine of antiquity." Which leaves us with a pretty massive question to ponder. Without the engineering genius of Alexandria's port, could the Roman Empire have survived as long as it did? Or would the map of the ancient world have looked entirely different?
We hope that you liked today's video. Please share your comments and subscribe to explore other similar opportunities. Post your questions in the comments section for future videos.